Imagine stealing the master blueprints to like the world's largest tech platforms, and you pull the whole thing off in exactly 18 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just 18 minutes.
Right. No zero-day exploits burning through firewalls, no massive brute force attacks against some server somewhere. Just 18 minutes of a developer drinking their morning coffee while, an automated script quietly vacuums up the keys to the entire digital kingdom.
I mean, that is the terrifying reality of the modern threat landscape right there.
Yeah.
The attacks that should really worry us most, they aren't the ones trying to break into the system from the outside anymore.
Yeah.
They're the ones silently weaponizing the system from within.
Exactly. Well, welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are likely someone who wants to stay incredibly well informed on where technology and security are actually heading, but without drowning in the endless flood of daily threat reports.
Right, because there's just so much noise out there.
So much noise. We know your time is valuable, so we've curated a stack of sources perfectly tailored for you. Today, we're looking at 3 critical cybersecurity reports that all dropped within just a 24-hour window, May 20th and 21st, 2026.
And viewing these 3 reports together, it reveals a very clear and honestly a very unsettling theme. We're calling it the subversion of trust.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, we rely on highly specific foundational systems to keep our digital world safe,
Right.
but we are now seeing the actual guardians and the architects of those systems becoming the vectors of attack.
Okay, let's unpack this because it's a lot. We're going to examine this from the ground up, starting with the literal shield of the PC ecosystem, which is Microsoft Defender.
Right, the absolute baseline.
Yeah, for millions of systems worldwide, Defender is the first and often the only line of defense against malicious software. But according to a newly released advisory, that shield is actively being turned against the systems it's supposed to protect.
Yeah, we are dealing with 2 flaws here that are currently being actively exploited in the wild. And, that phrase changes the entire conversation.
It really does. Actively exploited is the magic phrase.
Exactly. It means threat actors are using these exact techniques against real victims right now. It forces this out of the patch when you have some free time category,
Right.
and straight into the drop everything and fix this immediately category.
Which is exactly why the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CSIS, they've officially mandated that federal agencies apply the fixes by June 3rd.
Right.
Now, the main vulnerability here is a privilege escalation flaw, and it stems from something called improper link resolution.
Yeah, that's the technical term for it.
Right, so let's visualize this for a second. It's almost like an attacker putting up a fake detour sign inside a highly secure facility. Defender, acting as the automated patrol car, just follows the detour sign blindly.
Yeah, it doesn't question the sign at all.
Exactly. But the sign redirects Defender right into the attacker's trap, basically tricking the security tool into opening a locked vault using its own high-level clearance.
That detour analogy, that hits the nail on the head regarding the mechanism here. Because in an operating system, a link, specifically a symbolic link or symlink, is essentially just a shortcut.
Right, like on your desktop.
Exactly. It's a file that just points to another file or directory, and it's designed to make the system run more efficiently. So the vulnerability exists because Defender's automated scanning processes, they just aren't properly verifying where that shortcut actually leads before it acts as the destination.
So the attacker just leaves a malicious file at the end of the shortcut.
Essentially, yeah. The attacker who, to be fair, already needs some low-level basic access to the machine to pull this off.
Right, they have to be in the door.
Right. So they create this deceptive link pointing to a critical system file, but they manipulate the permissions along the way. When Defender's routine scan comes along and, follows that link, it accidentally executes or modifies the file on the attacker's behalf.
Oh, wow.
And because Defender operates at the deepest levels of the operating system, it performs that action with its own elevated permissions.
Which means it grants the attacker system privileges. So what does this actually mean for the everyday networks relying on this? I mean, for those of us used to just worrying about stopping standard admin rights from being stolen, what makes system-level access so much worse?
Well, administrator access gives you control over user settings and applications, sure. But system access is the absolute highest tier of privilege on a Windows machine.
Like above admin.
Way above. It essentially is the operating system.
Yeah.
If an attacker gains system privileges, they just own the hardware and the software entirely.
That's terrifying.
It is. They can disable other security tools, extract encrypted passwords directly from memory, install malware that survives a total reboot, or just move laterally across the entire corporate network completely undetected.
Yeah.
They essentially become a ghost in the machine with absolute unchecked power.
And the report notes a second bug paired with this, a denial of service vulnerability impacting Defender. Now, on paper, denial of service usually just sounds like a nuisance to me, just crashing a program. But paired with this privilege escalation, it feels highly calculated.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
A denial of service against your primary anti-malware of the tool is a highly strategic offensive maneuver.
Right, you're taking out the guard.
Exactly.
Mhm.
If an attacker can force the security software to crash or hang, they have just blinded the system's primary sentry. You blind the guard, and then you use that fake detour sign to steal the master keys.
Wow.
It's a devastating combination that literally uses the system's own architecture against itself.
So even if Defender is fully patched and the guard is, wide awake, it doesn't matter if the malware walking through the front door is wearing a perfectly forged FBI badge.
Right, exactly.
And that is the exact blind spot a threat group called Fox Tempest just exploited. Which brings us to our second report.
Yeah, this completely takes the subversion of trust from the local operating system to the much broader concept of digital identity.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting. Microsoft just disrupted this massive operation run by Fox Tempest, and they had created an entire business model around malware signing as a service.
MSAS, basically.
Yeah, MSAS. They weaponized Microsoft's artifact signing system to generate short-lived, fraudulent code signing certificates. Cyber criminals were literally paying between $5,000 and $9,000 a pop for these certificates.
It's a massive underground economy.
It's huge. And this enabled the deployment of major threats like Rosita ransomware via Vanilla Tempest, by the way, and other malware like Oyster, LumaStealer, Vidar, INC, Quillin, Blackbyte, and Akira. I mean, the victims spanned healthcare, education, government, and finance globally. It's like a cartel paying a corrupt official $5,000 to print a fake diplomatic passport so their smuggled goods never even get checked at customs.
What's really fascinating here is how this so perfectly mirrors the evolution of traditional organized crime into these highly specialized service-based economies.
Yeah, absolutely.
To really understand the economics of paying $9,000 just for a digital certificate, we have to look at why code signing is the holy grail for modern threat actors.
It basically acts as the ultimate VIP pass.
Precisely. In the digital world, a code signing certificate is a cryptographic signature issued by a trusted authority. It basically tells an operating system, hey, this software was manufactured by a legitimate corporate entity, and the code hasn't been tampered with since it left their servers. And most enterprise endpoint detection and response systems, or EDRs, they're heavily calibrated to look for these certificates.
Because checking every single line of code in every single application every time it runs.
Right, it would just completely grind a computer to a halt.
Yeah.
The security tools have to rely on trust.
Yeah, they have to.
They look for the cryptographic badge. If a file is unsigned, or it's signed by some unknown shady entity, the EDR flags it, quarantines it, and alerts the security team.
Makes sense.
But if that exact same malicious file carries a valid Microsoft artifact signing certificate, the security tools see that trusted Microsoft signature and just assume it's safe infrastructure code. The malware quietly slips past literally the most expensive enterprise defenses on the market.
Why are these ransomware gangs renting this as a service, though? I mean, if you're a highly sophisticated cartel deploying Rosita ransomware and demanding multi-million-dollar payouts from a hospital, why not just generate your own fake certificates?
Well, because creating a valid certificate that security tools will actually trust is incredibly tedious, and it leaves a massive paper trail.
Oh, right, because of the auditing.
Exactly. It requires passing strict identity verification checks, establishing a fake corporate entity that looks totally legitimate to auditors, and navigating all these complex bureaucratic systems. It's just an administrative nightmare for a criminal.
So they outsource the bureaucracy.
Yes. Fox Tempest recognized that friction and built a business around removing it. They solved the hard verification problem, infiltrated the Microsoft artifacts signing architecture, and then just rented out the automated solution.
Wow. And the report specifically mentions they generated short-lived certificates. I assume that's a deliberate tactic to avoid getting caught.
It is, yeah. It's
Sure.
a direct countermeasure against revocation. See, security researchers are constantly hunting for malicious certificates to add them to global block lists. If a certificate is permanently revoked, any malware using it immediately gets flagged everywhere. So by using short-lived certificates, Fox Tempest ensures the cryptographic signature is valid just long enough to get the ransomware through the target's front door.
Oh, that is sneaky.
By the time security researchers actually identify the anomaly and attempt to revoke the certificate, it has already naturally expired. The damage is done, and the attackers have moved on to a newly generated signature for the next target.
That is wild. It completely subverts the entire foundation of software verification. I mean, we've seen the anti-malware guard tricked with fake detours. We've seen the digital trust badges forged on an industrial scale, which logically brings us to the final evolution of this threat.
The source itself.
Exactly. If you can bypass the defenses and fake the verification, the absolute ultimate prize is compromising the actual factory where the software and the badges are built. We are talking about the developer's workstation.
Yeah, this is the supply chain attack. And it is perhaps the most critical vulnerability in the modern technology stack right now. If you can poison the well at the source, you never have to worry about attacking the individual houses downstream.
And, well, in this third report is GitHub. They officially confirmed a breach of their internal company repositories. A cybercriminal group known as Team PCP managed to exfiltrate about 3,800 internal repos.
That is a staggering amount of data.
It really is. And the vector for this attack wasn't a direct assault on GitHub servers. It was this massive cascading domino effect of compromised trust.
Right. So walk us through the specific chain of events that actually led Team PCP into GitHub's internal network.
Okay, so it starts with a poison version of a workflow tool. It's a Visual Studio Code extension called Next Console.
Okay.
A GitHub employee had this extension installed on their work device. But the developers of Next Console didn't intentionally put malware in their tool. They revealed that their extension was breached because one of their own developers had their system hacked.
And this wasn't an isolated incident, right?
Far from it. That Next developer was hacked as part of the massive Tanstack supply chain attack. Now, Tanstack is a widely used ecosystem of open source tools that developers rely on to build user interfaces.
Right, very popular framework.
Very. And that Tanstack breach had previously hit OpenAI, Mistral AI, and Grafana Labs.
So we were looking at a multi-tiered fourth-order compromise here.
Exactly.
Tanstack is compromised, which silently infects an exec developer who's just updating their tools. That developer's compromised machine then pushes malicious code into the Next Console expansion. A GitHub employee downloads the poisoned Next Console update, which finally grants Team PCP access to GitHub's internal network.
It's crazy.
It really highlights how interconnected and genuinely fragile the modern software supply chain truly is.
And here's the detail that absolutely floored me. This Trojanized version of the Next Console extension was live on the Visual Studio Marketplace for only 18 minutes. Yeah, I have to push back on the physics of this for a second. An 18-minute window. How much damage can really be done in the time it takes someone to step away and grab a cup of coffee? It sounds like a digital smash and grab targeting an architect's blueprints rather than the bank vault itself.
You know, you would think 18 minutes is barely enough time to even map a network, let alone execute a massive data heist. But this is the terrifying efficiency of automated credential stealers.
Okay.
The sheer speed is exactly why this methodology is becoming the weapon of choice. When that GitHub employee, and we have to assume hundreds of other developers around the world, when they updated or installed that extension during that brief window, a trap was sprung the very millisecond the software loaded.
Yeah, and the report details exactly how the trap worked, and the layers of deception are just brilliant.
Yeah, they are.
So the extension looked and behaved exactly like the normal Nexus console. But under the hood, on startup, it silently ran a shell command in the background. This command reached out to the internet and downloaded a hidden payload. But, and this is the key, it didn't download it from some shady anonymous server. It pulled it from a planted commit on the official NRLLMX GitHub repository itself.
And that detail is crucial. Enterprise security teams heavily monitor outbound network traffic from developer workstations. If an extension suddenly tries to connect to an unknown Russian or North Korean IP address, alarms go off instantly.
Right, they catch that immediately.
Exactly. But by hiding the malicious payload inside a forgotten commit on the official Trusted Next repository, the attackers completely blinded the network monitors. The security tools just saw an official developer tool communicating with its own official source code repository.
Because it looked completely normal.
It looked like completely normal, trusted traffic.
And once that hidden package downloaded and executed, it acted like an automated vacuum cleaner for secrets. It didn't waste time snooping around manually.
Right. It was pre-programmed to target the specific directories where developers store their most sensitive authentication tokens.
The list of what it vacuumed up is just staggering. It stole data from 1Password vaults, Anthropic Claude code configurations, NPM package manager tokens, Amazon Web Services credentials, and GitHub authentication keys. It basically grabbed the master keys to the developer's entire digital life.
Which perfectly answers your question about the 18-minute window.
Very, it does.
A human operator could never navigate a file system, locate all those specific encrypted stores, and exfiltrate them in 18 minutes. But a Python or a shell script, it can execute those commands in milliseconds.
Unbelievable.
The moment the extension initializes in the background, the secrets are bundled, encrypted, and fired off to the attacker's drop server. The catastrophic damage is literally done before the developer has even finished typing their first line of code for the day.
That perfectly explains how Team PCP was able to exfiltrate 3,800 repositories. With the stolen authentication tokens, they didn't even have to hack GitHub. They just logged in, masquerading as a highly privileged employee.
Right, they had the keys.
Now, GitHub's Chief Information Security Officer, Alexis Wales, did release a statement clarifying the scope. She stated, and I quote, "We have no evidence of impact to customer information stored outside of GitHub's internal repositories, such as our customers' own enterprises, organizations, and repositories."
Okay, and that is a very important distinction for the broader ecosystem. The attackers didn't breach the public-facing GitHub platform where millions of independent developers and companies host their code.
Thank goodness.
Right. They breached the internal company repositories where GitHub's own engineers build and maintain GitHub itself.
She did add a caveat, though, noting that some of GitHub's internal repositories contain information from customers, specifically excerpts of support interactions used for debugging. GitHub has taken steps to contain the incident and forcefully rotated all critical secrets.
Well, rotating secrets, invalidating all existing passwords, API keys, and session tokens. That is the absolute mandatory first step.
You have to assume everything is burned.
You have to operate under the assumption that every single piece of authentication data that touched that infected machine is now being sold on the dark web.
Yeah.
And, we connect this back to the bigger picture. This incident exposes the ultimate single point of failure in modern cybersecurity.
Developer themselves.
Exactly. We spend billions of dollars securing the production servers, deploying zero-trust cloud infrastructure, building these massive digital fortresses. But the developers who build and maintain that infrastructure, they require unfettered, highly privileged access just to do their jobs.
Right.
They need to download external libraries, run complex automation scripts, install productivity extensions like Nix Console. Threat actors have just realized a fundamental truth. Why spend 6 months trying to brute force an impenetrable cloud server when you can just poison a routine update for a developer's workflow tool and quietly steal their direct access credentials?
It relies entirely on the developer trusting the tools they download from official, verified marketplaces. And when that trust is broken upstream, the blast radius is just enormous. We saw it cascade through OpenAI, Mistral, Grafana, and now the heart of GitHub itself.
It is a systemic failure of trust.
It really has been a rough stretch for the concept of digital security, hasn't it? As we wrap up this deep dive for you today, I think it's worth taking a step back to look at the entire board we've uncovered. We started with Microsoft Defender, the literal anti-malware shield, being manipulated through its own internal shortcuts to hand over system-level control to attackers.
Right, and then we examined the digital badges of trust, the artifact signing system, being commoditized, forged, and sold as an underground service to ransomware cartels, allowing malware to basically walk right past enterprise defenses.
And finally, we saw the developer environments, the very blueprints where the software is born, breached through a poison dependency chain that did its damage in a mere 18 minutes. From the shield to the badge to the blueprint, every single layer of trust was fundamentally subverted.
But, understanding these mechanisms, really seeing how a flaw in link resolution pairs with the denial of service, or how an upstream dependency poisons a downstream workstation, that is the best way to navigate this landscape.
Absolutely.
When you understand the how and the why behind the attacks, the daily headlines become far less overwhelming and much more actionable.
Yeah, you don't need to be paralyzed by the noise of constant threat reports. You just need to understand how the machinery of these attacks actually functions. But we want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder as you step back into your day.
Okay.
If our anti-malware shields, our cryptographic certificates, and our developer environments can all be seamlessly weaponized from within, what happens when we can no longer mathematically prove that the foundations of our software are safe?
That's a scary thought.
Right. Is the future of cybersecurity less about building taller, thicker walls to keep the bad guys out, and more about designing systems that assume the walls are already breached, the badges are already forged, and the threat is already sitting inside the network?
It requires a complete paradigm shift in how we architect trust.
Something to think about. Until next time.